I had been married to my husband for 5 years, and while my stepson, Nathan, had been a part of my life since the beginning, things between us had always been somewhat distant. He was 18, a senior in high school, and I never really saw myself as a mother figure to him, more like a distant authority. Still, I tried to be kind, offer advice, and always be supportive when needed. One Friday evening, Nathan texted me, asking if I could help him pick out an outfit for a date. He had been talking about a girl he liked for weeks, and I assumed he just wanted a second opinion on what to wear. I'd helped him with his wardrobe before, so I didn't think much of it. I told him to come over to my room where I kept my closet space, as I had a mirror and ample lighting. As he walked in, I noticed something different about him. He seemed nervous, his usual confident demeanor replaced with uncertainty. He stood at the door, his eyes darting between the floor and me. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something felt off. Nathan asked if I could help him with a shirt and jacket combination, but as he removed his shirt to try things on, something inside me stirred. It wasn't sexual, but it felt intimate. He looked so much like his father, but in that moment, I also saw a younger version of my husband, someone I was deeply in love with. I told myself I was overthinking it, but there was a nervous energy in the air. I helped him pick out the right clothes, but there was still an unspoken tension. As I handed him the shirt, our fingers brushed for a second, and I felt an uncomfortable heat rise in my chest. I quickly pulled away, but Nathan seemed unaware, his focus on the outfit and the date ahead. As he left the room to get dressed, I felt this strange unease. A few minutes later, I stood in front of the mirror, trying to shake off the feeling. But before I could settle my thoughts, my husband walked in. He didn't say a word at first, just stood there, looking at me with a mix of suspicion and something else. The atmosphere in the room shifted. I could feel the weight of unspoken questions hanging between us. It wasn't until later that night when my husband came clean, revealing a deeply unsettling truth. He had been monitoring my conversations and noticed a subtle shift in my relationship with Nathan. While there hadn't been anything physical, my husband had seen the way I'd started talking about Nathan and the increasing amount of time we'd spent together. He told me that he had been uncomfortable with how close I'd become to Nathan, even though he hadn't said anything before. The lines between parent and stepson had been blurred, and there were emotions involved on both sides that neither of us had acknowledged until now. In the weeks that followed, the truth came out. I realized that in the process of helping Nathan and spending time with him, I had unintentionally become emotionally attached in ways that threatened my marriage. Nathan had looked at me not just as a stepmother, but as someone he could rely on emotionally when his relationship with his father was strained. I had unintentionally filled a void for him, and the more I helped him navigate his challenges, the more I became involved in his emotional life. It was a slippery slope, one that neither of us had recognized until we were too far down. Eventually, I had to confront the reality of what had happened. This wasn't just about clothing and guidance, it was about emotional boundaries being crossed. The intimacy we had shared, though seemingly innocent, had shifted into a gray area where trust could easily be broken. It wasn't until I openly confronted my husband and Nathan that we were able to talk through everything. It was painful. It was messy. And it was a revelation of how much we had all been emotionally tied together, perhaps more than was healthy. We all had to recalibrate our relationships, learn to respect boundaries, and deal with the complications of blended families and the emotions that come with them. The emotional distance that had initially kept me from Nathan had eventually been filled with something far more complicated than I had ever expected: attachment, dependence, and in some ways, emotional betrayal. When entering a new relationship, especially one that involves children from a previous marriage, the dynamics of emotional attachment can be complicated. In a blended family, emotions are layered, often tangled between past relationships, new connections, and evolving roles within the family. One of the most complex emotional challenges occurs when the stepmother or stepfather must navigate how they emotionally relate to their stepchildren. These dynamics can go unnoticed until an event or moment brings the underlying tension to the surface. The emotional complexity arises not just from the relationships themselves, but from the internal struggles individuals face as they try to balance love, responsibility, and personal identity. For a stepparent, The feeling of attachment to a stepchild is often one of careful observation and gradual growth. Unlike biological children, the emotional bond with a stepchild is not automatic, and it's shaped by time, shared experiences, and sometimes the acceptance of the new family structure. This bond can be seen in its most innocent form: a stepparent offering advice on life choices, helping with homework, or providing guidance. However, the depth of these relationships is rarely linear or simple. What starts as a professional or distant form of care may grow into something more intimate and complex over time, especially when the stepparent fulfills emotional roles that might otherwise be left unfulfilled. The stepparent's role within the family is also fraught with uncertainty. There is often an unspoken question of what exactly the stepparent's role should be. They may struggle to define themselves: are they a parent, a guide, or simply a supportive figure? This can be particularly challenging if they are emotionally invested in their spouse and have a natural inclination to care for their children. But navigating the fine line between emotional involvement and emotional overreach is tricky. For some stepparents, this confusion creates an environment where the lines between support and dependency begin to blur, fostering a sense of attachment that can sometimes cross emotional boundaries. This attachment is often born from a place of empathy. When a stepparent first enters a child's life, they may do so with a genuine desire to help. The child, particularly if they are still young, might gravitate toward the stepparent for guidance, especially if they've experienced loss or instability due to parental separation or divorce. The stepparent, in turn, may feel a deep responsibility to provide comfort and stability. What can start as an innocent and noble act of providing support can easily become emotionally entangled, especially if there is a lack of clear communication or boundaries. Stepparents might feel a need to offer emotional reassurance, not just for the child's well-being but as a way to solidify their place in the family dynamic. It's this growing emotional investment that sets the stage for complicated feelings to emerge, as the stepparent starts to develop an attachment to the child that is not always straightforward or easy to manage. One of the critical challenges faced by stepparents is the sense of displacement they often feel. As a newcomer to the family unit, they may struggle with a sense of outsider status, even if they are welcomed by the biological parent. The lack of biological connection can create emotional distance, and in an attempt to bridge this gap, stepparents may pour emotional energy into building a relationship with their stepchildren. However, the child might already have established bonds with the biological parent, and this can lead to jealousy or a sense of rivalry, making the stepparent feel disconnected or unrecognized in their efforts. Moreover, the child's emotional attachment to their biological parent often creates tension. A stepchild may feel conflicted by their attachment to their biological parent, while also trying to form a new relationship with the stepparent. This situation can cause confusion, especially if the child sees the stepparent as a threat to the emotional bond with their biological parent. For the stepparent, this emotional tug-of-war can be challenging, as they may feel their efforts to be a positive influence in the child's life are unappreciated or misunderstood. The emotional complexity is further heightened when the child enters adolescence, a stage characterized by identity seeking and emotional upheaval. Teenagers may become more sensitive to the presence of their stepparent, viewing them with skepticism or distrust. Adolescents are also more likely to experience feelings of resentment toward a stepparent if they feel their relationship with their biological parent is being jeopardized. As the stepparent tries to navigate this emotional terrain, their attachment to the child can become more complicated. They may start questioning whether they are truly accepted or if they have overstepped their boundaries. The natural desire to be a supportive figure can give way to uncertainty, and without clear emotional communication, the stepparent may find themselves in a situation where they feel emotionally invested, yet unfulfilled and misunderstood. For many stepparents, the emotional attachment they develop to their stepchildren is genuine and heartfelt, but the lack of a clear familial role and the unspoken rules of how to interact can lead to an internal struggle. As stepparents, they want to foster love and trust, but without the automatic bond that biological parents share with their children, they must carefully navigate a path that takes into account not only their own emotions but the feelings and boundaries of their spouse and stepchildren. This emotional complexity can be a source of both fulfillment and tension, as the stepparent seeks to maintain a supportive and caring relationship while respecting the family's inherent boundaries. In these situations, emotions often surface in unexpected ways. What may have begun as a simple act of providing guidance can spiral into a much deeper emotional attachment, which, if not carefully managed, can lead to the erosion of trust, misunderstandings, and potentially even betrayal. The emotional terrain of a blended family is intricate, where bonds are formed out of necessity but can often become fraught with complications when emotions run deeper than anticipated.